Hello and welcome to Biteside. I'm Seamus Byrne. Joining me this week is Nic Healey. Again, Nick, how are you doing?
Yeah, really good. It is kind of weird. On a Wednesday, it is Wednesday, isn't it? On a Wednesday to discover we've got a week more of lockdown if you're in the big city, restrictions everywhere else. It's a weird day to be here, but a good one.
Yeah, and that's it. It's, I'm in that terrible, fear zone right now about PAX in Melbourne in a couple of months. The closer it gets, while restrictions are still around, the more likely it feels like it's just not going to be able to happen. The industry awards night has been, they got ahead of, as soon as the lockdown started, they were like, yeah, we're going to have to postpone because it was meant to be next Friday. And, they were clearly very correct in that early decision because there's no way it was going to happen next Friday. It's an awkward time right now. Can we just get some vaccines?
Please. And of course, Melbourne under the spotlight too because of something you and I both watch and are interested in. Formula One getting cancelled. That was officially called yesterday. A lot of the RG coming about it today. So, look, lots and lots happening. I keep meaning to ask, how have you gone on the hunt for vaccines? How are you doing?
So I am fully Pfizered up now.
Same.
I've had my double. My wife had the AstraZeneca. She's in a group that was allowed to sort of get that before they started lowering age groups, and so she had to wait 12 weeks. And so it was that hilarious thing where she got her first one, and then it's probably 6 weeks or so into that they then started allowing folks like us to get the Pfizer, and I was in and out, and then 3 weeks later had the second one before she'd had her second shot of the AZ. So, that was just an amusing little anecdote. But here in our household, it means both adults are fully vaxxed up now. And, of course, still super careful because, again, right, that's its own debate. But just, it's really hard right now to even say follow the science because when we have health ministers in different states, basically, or, people standing around arguing with each other over the right and the wrong. And I'm like, yeah, but even some of them aren't even following the data properly. Can we just please?
Please is probably the way to put it. Look, it is exhausting.
I'm like, I don't know. That was please.
Yeah. Look, let's just get some vaccines out to the people who need them. We should kick in to the actual
U12 students at rich private schools.
They're doing fine. They're doing absolutely fine. There's no issue at all. No issue at all. You have got a couple of things to say about Biteside.
Yeah, so I thought this is a good place to bring people up to speed. If you're a listener, it means you care a lot. And so at the moment, I've been doing lots of different tests and things. I took a couple of weeks off Bits, which is the daily news show, and the newsletter, because I just wanted to been testing so many different things. One of the big things I wanted to test was writing more stories on the site every day, getting more news out there, just fast news stuff, not necessarily all the deeper stuff. And actually, most of the budget, thanks to memberships, that budget goes towards paying external writers to contribute cool articles to the site. And so a lot of that is the meatier, thoughtful stuff that people have, really want to write a story about. So that stuff is sort of covered there. I've been playing with more fun stuff and it's been doing really well. And so in terms of that effort to drive the site forward, I've had obviously a group of podcasts on the site, and we're going to consolidate them down to the main Biteside show. So shows like Jetpacks, where we've been interviewing lots of different people in the tech industry. Those interviews are going to come over here to the Biteside feed. High Resolution, where we've been interviewing game developers. That's all going to come over to this main feed. So it's really that idea of going, okay, the pattern has been those shows have often been every couple of weeks anyway. And so it feels like everything coming together will mean there'll definitely be a show every single week. I'm also going to start bringing some of the really good episodes from the last couple of years from the other shows, start kind of dropping those into this feed for people who might never have actually heard some of those other episodes and things, but ultimately to try to just slowly bring the full collection and the archive across into the main Biteside show. I think it'll be great because I'm still have heaps of guests lined up across games and tech. A couple of shows in the can that I haven't got out yet. Did a great interview with one of the people from Devolver, the game publisher.
Very cool.
Literally just about Devolver and the fact that they built this weird reputation. And, their E3 showcase events are just wild and weird. But ultimately, they just seem like one of the really great indie publishers and, how they go about finding games. And it's just a really fun chat. And so I'm going to actually try to carefully cut that. And then, in the long term, it's like, well, maybe we'll start looking at, serialized type podcast stuff where it's like, okay, well, we'll produce like episode series and things like that. Because that seems like the stuff out there in the wider market that's working really well. But for now, just getting back to saying there's a core Biteside show. We'll catch up every now and then each month. We'll have other interviews with cool people each month, and it might be sometimes there'll be 2 episodes in a week. But there'll definitely always be an episode every single week. And yeah, I think it's really great. Lots more stuff to read on the site. That's also kind of cool. Right now, I know we're going to get into some stuff about shows and things as part of today's chat. But, today we've got a story that's actually doing quite well, talking about the fact that this weekend on Dungeons & Dragons official Twitch channel, they're going to screen the 1980s Dungeons & Dragons cartoon, which is bloody great. And
hang on, no way.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And it's the kind of thing where I'm like, that's a fun thing to share with people. And I'm like, writing more stuff like that rather than trying to, fit it in somewhere else or just tweet it or whatever. I'm like, this actually seems like a thing that is working well for what can help Biteside grow into a site that becomes sustainable. So that's awesome fun. And I am going to watch the hell out of Dungeons & Dragons this weekend.
I have had to go and look this up because I was just like, absolutely what? I vaguely remember this. I'd forgotten all about it. And I'm just absolutely stunned to learn that the voice of Eric the Cavalier was Ralph Malph from Happy Days.
I did not place that like ever.
Who would? Why would anyone place
I remember that Willie Ames was the Ranger.
Adam Rich, Nicholas from 8 is Enough, is the magician. I'm having a... It's
quite a cast.
This is quite a cast. This is doing my head in. This is amazing.
Yeah, and look, I even actually noticed the production company behind it. They made the classic Spider-Man and Incredible Hulk cartoons. They made this. This got cancelled before the end of its 3rd season, which is kind of... In an animation sense, you almost think, aren't they working far enough in advance that you'd let them finish the season and then call it? But, it is what it is. But, so lots of people are always like, they should do a 4th season or they should do this or do that. But you're like, in hindsight, this company, I think the next year after they had finished this, they started making the Transformers cartoon. And you're kind of like, that's, for them as a company, that was probably a really good decision to go, let's put our eggs over into this basket over here, and it becomes one of the biggest cartoons of the 1980s.
And I got to say, a particularly good decision because they brought over the voice of Venger, the voice of evil, a little man called Peter Cullen, who, of course, might be the best-known voice of Optimus Prime anywhere and the most loved voice of Optimus Prime.
So good. So
good. All right, okay. Good. So, all right, I'm going to have to work out how Twitch works now so I can watch that. Sounds absolutely amazing.
So it's going to be very early Saturday morning local time, but I'm not sure if they're going to just keep repeating it all weekend. Sometimes that's the kind of thing people do on a Twitch thing when they're doing something like this. But even if you don't watch it right at that moment, usually for at least a week, that stream will be available in the kind of archive of recent streams. So you should be able to dive in and press play and basically watch it from the start all the way through, just via the Twitch D&D channel.
Okay, I'm genuinely gonna have to do that. That's my weekend sorted. This is fantastic.
Buy a box of sugary cereal. Get up on Saturday morning.
This is wild. I'm gonna have to. This is so good. All right, yeah, all right. Nostalgia. I'm just wondering how bad it's gonna be because there wasn't necessarily a lot of respect for the medium and the format back in those 80s cartoons.
Yeah, and So have you never seen any of it?
Oh, no, I've seen it, but like back in the 80s, and I barely remember it.
Yeah. It's even funny thinking back on the fact that it's totally first edition Dungeons & Dragons because it started in 1983, so it was all still pretty fresh. And it was like, so the classes of the group of kids, it's got the weird things like the Cavalier, the Acrobat. It's not a rogue, it's a thief. You know, like it was such genuinely first edition Dungeons and Dragons. Though Tiamat's there, right? Like right out of the gate, they're like, and we'll bring one of the biggest, baddest monsters of the game into this, which is kind of awesome too.
Yeah, sure, with Frank Welker, who of course is Fred from Scooby-Doo.
Oh man, it's great. All right, look, we could wax lyrical on that one all day, but you brought one to the table that we do want to kind of dig into a little bit. A crowd-funded beer for esports.
How wild is this? How much fun does this sound like too? It's just a remarkable thing. It's Gravitas wanting to crowdfund an esports beer. And look, I got to admit, I looked at that and I was like, I don't know the team. I don't really understand what's happening here. But, you know, in terms of recognizing marketing, recognizing how sponsorship works, and even just recognizing how interested people are in esports, this is a really, really big deal because this isn't a small brewery necessarily. They know what they're doing. They're looking to call it the Gravitas Glory beer. They're talking about it being sort of not quite a sponsorship, but a really bit of a, I don't know, an acknowledgement of the work that these guys are doing. They want to brew it in Victoria at Urban Alley. They're bringing all of this stuff together, and they're really pushing it as the very first esports beer produced for an esports team in Australia, which makes me wonder, has there been one done overseas? I haven't looked into that yet. I'd be shocked, genuinely shocked, if this wasn't the first in the world.
Look, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I've had a few chats with Sean Cullinan, who runs and owns at least most of, if not the whole thing of Gravitas. But he is actually, you know, a sports marketing guy. You know, as in sort of works around the world. He's an Aussie, but works around the world in sports marketing and helping like sports orgs to do smarter digital marketing. So I know he, really started to see. Esports is a really interesting place to start exploring. Quite a few years ago, because Gravitas has now been around for 3 or 4 seasons in the League of Legends. But yeah, look, it totally fits with knowing him. I'm like, this is great. This is totally a Sean Cullinan kind of an idea to just, I'm sure he'd probably hear this and then tell me, actually, someone else came up, blah, blah, blah. But it's great to kind of watch a team, and they're even taking the piss out of themselves, I noticed, because they're not one of the top flight teams in the league. They are really good at scoring the occasional upset victory against, sort of more fancied rivals from time to time. But there's one of the lines here where, was it? Believe us, you need a good beer after the roller coaster of watching some Gravitas games.
I love that. I love the fact they described it as, medium body, slight haze, smashable, just like the opposing team.
Yeah. And that's it. It is great that they're having fun with it. I really do feel like I'm going to have to, and like, it seems like the right way to do a partnership like this with a brewery, to do it through, because it's a possible campaign. So it means essentially they're running a big pre-order system, and it's just kind of really a nice way to not even have to kind of go, well, we need to make 1,000 cases of these things and then hope we can move them. It's a really good fit for doing small batch, smart, brewing that's going to actually help do a bit of promo for both sides, I'm sure. Not have anybody feeling like they got left in the hole at the end of it because, it didn't quite do as well as they wanted or wherever it might be.
And fully funded now with a few days left to go. So that's the good news.
Yeah. Look, I'll have to make sure I'll have this episode up this afternoon, being Wednesday, so that you will then know you have 4 days left, ladies and gentlemen, 4 days. Get your pledge in. There'll be a link in the notes. Or, you don't have to.
You don't have to if you don't want to. If you're having dry July, still order it. Just drink it and August.
Order it, sit on it until August.
Absolutely perfect. Look, I hate to bring this up, but I've got to because my hunt for the white whale continues. I still cannot get a PlayStation 5. It is actually got ridiculous. I have had, and I went and checked this, I've had the same 5 tabs open since February this year. I get into work each morning at about 20 past 5 a.m. and I just refresh all of them just in the hope that something's happened and I've got just enough time to get in there. I came incredibly close, as I think we spoke about last time. It was sold out from under me while it was in my shopping cart.
Oh,
very unhappy about that.
That's nasty.
Yeah, it was really unhappy about that. But no, there hasn't even been any updates that I've seen suggesting that I might be close.
And look, Sony, in one of their earnings calls a couple of months ago, I believe basically said they see no end to supply constraint before 2022. So, for anybody who kind of hoped, well, I'll get it next year, second Christmas, that'll be the time I get it. It's like,
maybe
no,
not.
it's probably still going to be I have faith, Nick. The fact that you are this committed, you're doing the refresh cycle every morning, you're up early, that's a champion move. You've got that opportunity being on radio first thing in the morning to go, all right, let's check it. They maybe they're updating the inventory systems at about 8:30 a.m. when you're still on the air.
Anything's possible. Anything is possible here. I'm going to stay on this. I absolutely am. I've decided I want one. But it genuinely makes me curious. How many are out there? Who are playing PlayStation 5 games? Who are these games being made for? What is the spread actually like? And is it impacting the devs? Are they looking at that and thinking, well, yeah, we want to be making games for this platform, but where's the reach? Are we actually doing better to make it for PlayStation 4 still?
Yeah, that's an awesome question because exactly I'm trying to remember. There was, I think it might be some Ubisoft game that's coming soon where people were kind of giving them a hard time about the fact that something they're working on isn't going to be on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And you're like, these people have had to plan well in advance. Surely in that planning cycle, there are certain new games that they have to be saying, we want to both make the development process easier by not trying to develop for 4 different consoles in terms of final outputs and debugging and all that kind of jazz, and just say, buy now, thinking 2 years ago probably, they're like, by that point surely next generation will be the main generation and we can just commit. And now that's kind of feeling like a harder choice to have made just because of everything else that's been going on, especially if someone does think about being an exclusive Sony developer. That side of it has got to be sort of really hard as well. Whereas, it does seem like in a lot of ways that this has all been an awesome opportunity for Xbox to start being more widely it's still hard to get a Series X, but you can get a Series S if you want to get one. Apparently, that's pretty comfortable at the moment, and the fact that it is so Game Pass centric. And that it is so easy for someone to now just say, hey, I'm just going to try out a month of Game Pass because I can, pretty soon I can just boot that up on my TV set without anything but a controller. And you could use a PlayStation controller to play Xbox Game Pass via a TV when that app rolls out. Man, there's a really big opportunity there for when you think towards the end of the year when that is rolled out across TV sets and all sorts of things, just making it so easy for people to go, well, screw it. I'm just going to try it for a month. And if they like it, there's a whole different game in town.
There is a whole different game in town. And look, really quickly, while we're talking about consoles, of course, brand new Nintendo Switch dropped, and it was not what anyone hoped it would be, I don't think. Nintendo, weird swing and a miss for them on a naming category as well, because it's just called the Nintendo Switch open bracket OLED model close bracket.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? They didn't
even try.
They couldn't even get away with saying the Switch HD or something that, in past years, in all the handhelds where you get the Well, they could have gone with the Switch I or the Switch. They could have Switch O. I mean, it's funny because I was surprised. I did feel like the whole, I don't follow it that closely on the Nintendo side. So everyone talking about there's a 4K with an upgraded processor coming, I'm like, okay, sure, I'll believe you. So when I saw that this was, okay, it's an OLED screen at 720p, it's slightly bigger, smaller bezels so that it's exactly the same size, with a better kickstand, built-in Ethernet, better speakers in handheld mode, and just all those little kinds of things where you go, oh, and like 64 gig storage instead of 32. And you're like, cool.
But that's it.
But it's kind of the same. Like, I realize everything about the technology was available in 2017 when the Switch first launched. So there's no part of this that is, they couldn't have done this when it first launched. What they couldn't have done was done this when it first launched and still make all of the money based on whatever the launch price was. I can see there's a lot of disappointed folks out there. But someone pointed out that on like the 3DS and the Game Boy, they pretty much, it was almost every year that they did have like these new models coming out, or at least every 1 or 2 years, where they added letters and this and that. And so from people kind of saying, well, there's no way they could launch a Pro next year, if they follow their own handheld like history, then maybe they will just kind of go, yeah, we don't care. We just put like a new one out every year with slightly upgraded bits and pieces. Just in time for Breath of the Wild next year, perhaps.
Maybe that is all they care about. And maybe it is just catching people who hadn't made the decision yet. I mean, if you hadn't bought a Switch, obviously you're going to buy this one. But we're still
this
talking,
is really nice.
We're still talking about a $540 console.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for a handheld. It's a huge amount of money. Like, I'm only looking at paying $200 more than that for a PlayStation 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is that feeling where I'm like, so if they do a Pro next year, are they just going to basically go, well, we're going to charge $750 for that because we can. We're Nintendo, and we know that people will give us the money we want them to give us.
It is so confusing. Anyway, there we go. That's all. Also, I'm still playing Days Gone, even though I said last time I wasn't really enjoying it and it was relentlessly average. It is, and I'm not. And I'm still playing it.
But
and I can't stop
playing it.
And
look, I can't laugh at you. I still play World of Warcraft.
But you actually enjoy that, and I can't tell if I'm enjoying this. It's got all of the features I expect from an Ubisoft game, in that it's the same gameplay and the same missions, just in a new area and a different person giving it to you, and you've got to unlock some stuff, and then you go and do the same missions and the same style of gameplay in a slightly different area. It's just, I don't know, and yet here I am, and the acting's bad, and the main character is the least likable character and the least fleshed out character in the entire game, and yet here we are, I'm playing it, I'll go home tonight, and I'll play it, and I don't know what's happening, and it's annoying the hell out of me, and I really hope they don't make a sequel. Shall we talk about Loki?
Let's.
Because I got really confused last night. I sat down and I could not for the life of me work out why there wasn't a new Loki to watch. And that's because this week made me feel like last night was Wednesday. So tonight I get to actually watch the new Loki. Are you enjoying it?
I will absolutely say I'm enjoying the experience of watching that show each week. For the time I'm watching it, it's beautiful to watch. There's cool characters in it. The performances are great. I'm not sure if the story is doing it for me, but the experience of watching it, I'm thoroughly enjoying. How about you?
Well, and I will just say we may get into spoiler territory here. So if you haven't watched I think there's been 4 episodes already, just to be warned, we may drop a few things here and there, not ruining it, but they could be considered as spoilers. I am a little worried that actually it is a fairly average and quite bad show, actually. But I keep getting distracted by how good it looks and not noticing that.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this very carefully. And yes, it's all right not to like things. And yes, and I get that. And, I'm not saying that you should feel bad.
Everyone has to agree with me
if you're enjoying it. But I don't think it's a good show.
Yeah, look, I'm 1,000% with you on the aesthetic of this show in that we adore it. Like myself, the kids, Sally. I mean, Sally's an art history person and design nut. And so, we're just all over this whole mid-century aesthetic. And even, the view of the TVA, like this kind of total, retrofuturism city, that's totally in my, design nerd wheelhouse. I love it. I feel the thing that is hitting me is I do feel like there is a pattern emerging particularly off the back of WandaVision, which was kind of more the, let's have a confusing first series of episodes and then it all starts to fall into place at the end. I feel like there's an element of this here, and I'm really kind of worried that Marvel needs to be careful not to make this a really clear pattern in their shows, because the fact that we get, that there's this whole, it's going to blow it all wide open in the in the credits little kind of mini scene at the end of the last episode, which was episode 4, I think. And suddenly you're like, oh, there's something very different going on here than we've thought. You're like, that feels a lot like what they've already done. And to then sort of add to that sense that, well, then episode 5, the second last episode, is going to be where they do a giant explainer episode on here's everything you haven't understood about what's really going on. And then you get your kind of final episode that, tries to fit all the loose ends together and make it all make sense by the end.
Yeah.
And it just, I'm like, that's starting to really feel like a formula. And please don't turn these things into formulas, because you've been, right. We've only had 3 of these Marvel TV shows so far, so it's hard to really complain, but it's getting close to being very, very, very formulaic.
Look, it's true. We have only had 3, and one of them I forgot I even watched because
Forgot it was even
Falcon and the Winter Soldier just didn't go where it needed to go to be a particularly memorable show. I think what you need more, and here's where we might get into spoiler territory, you need more than a Richard E. Grant cameo to make this seem like you're going to come out of the woodwork and go, bam, you weren't expecting that, were you? No, I wasn't. But it also wasn't particularly interesting as a little twist at the end. I mean, no one sat around thinking, oh, God, Loki's dead now. That's the end of the show. I mean, we knew there had to be something else coming along. We're not surprised by it. And yes, I love the David Lynch remakes video game Control aesthetic of the entire thing. I think it's fabulous. I think it's perfect. I'm really loving it. But I don't know. It's so out of continuity in its own way, which is kind of problematic. I'm just not, it's unless they answer this, where was the TVA for all of Endgame?
Yeah.
Like, where were they? How do variants work? If the TVA is so good at pruning a branch almost seconds after it's happened, how can there be genuine variants? They don't have time to look like that demonic Loki we saw very briefly in a hologram and things like that. Like, how is that possible if all the pruning happens mere seconds? If the problems with a split timeline is it becomes so dangerous so quickly, then there can't be any variation. Not major variation, can there? I just feel like they've come out with an amazing idea, not really worked their way through it, and are hoping that if they just do everything fast enough and loud enough, no one will notice.
And I totally enjoyed the first couple of episodes. It really, I guess, is just the way it, I don't know, there was kind of an awkwardness to bringing in Sylvie, who I love. And the episode where the two of them are sort of just, trying to get out of, the place that they've gone to. I can't remember which one of the Armageddons they'd gone to, but then that was kind of great. I really enjoyed that whole idea and exploring variant Lokis as a concept, all that sort of stuff. I thought But like I say, I think the performances themselves, I'm like totally enjoying. It really is that idea of have they let themselves down with the, I guess with the arc of what is this series actually going to be about? And did we have to once again make everybody wait until the very, very, very final moments for it to be realized as an idea? Because, yeah, that's the bit I think is getting played out at the moment.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm hoping it's not that way, but they don't have long to make sure it doesn't go that way. Should we talk about some of the TV shows we're kind of more looking forward to?
Yes. I am so psyched. I actually wrote about it earlier this week, and we had a lot of people read the story, which was always good to see. But I am super psyched for Noah Hawley getting to lead an Aliens TV show. So based in the world of Alien and that whole xenomorph thing. But Noah Hawley, guy behind Fargo TV series and Legion TV series. And in an interview at Vanity Fair, he talked about the idea that what he wants the show to be is all about the kind of roots of the first two shows being really about like the working class and the grunt class of people being kind of thrown to the slaughter while the corporation is trying to work out how it can make money off the problem. And I'm like, that is a big part of what the first two movies delivered on. In that, it was like a subtle part of the story, but it really gave it weight in a way that when the later kind of movie started to try to be more about, what's the lore of where did they originally come from and the space jockey and all that stuff. I'm like, I love the idea of that, but they didn't execute on that well. But this idea of, making your final stand to kind of hold back these things and contain them while there are these corporate forces trying to work out how do we not really kill them, more like use it somehow. You're like, there's some real meat there, and I think that'll be great in a TV series.
And I think he'll do an incredible job with it. I mean, you mentioned a few of the things he's done. He actually is the creator and EP of a one-season wonder show that I absolutely love called The Unusuals. That was an attempt to do a dramedy cop way before Brooklyn Nine-Nine based on the ethos of MASH. And it was, I thought, incredibly successful. I was absolutely gutted that it didn't get a second season. Jeremy Renner in it, way before we kind of really had been bored by Jeremy Renner. It's very good. Check it out. It is excellent. But yeah, I've read some of his books because he's an excellent fiction writer. I have a lot of faith that he can do something novel and genuinely fascinating with this.
Yeah, and like set here on Earth. So I think that's a great little idea. As in the interview, he sort of says, the stakes are immediately higher when it comes to containment if you are already here on Earth, not like, what if they get home? It's like, they're already here. We really have to not let this thing get out of control.
Yeah. Look, I'm really keen, and I hope it doesn't get bogged down, as you said, in the weird decisions that Prometheus and Covenant made to try and work out some kind of bizarre lore around it. I mean, they were forgettable as movies almost instantly, and it's pretty hard to pop Idris Elba in a movie and forget it immediately.
I introduced the kids to, and Sally actually had never watched it. We watched Aliens last night, and my God, that holds up well. It is so good. Sigourney Weaver, such a badass. Ripley, incredible character. Oh man, that was so good.
So good. They were excellent. And having it tightly put together is what makes it unbelievably good. And to me, it's always been horror first, science fiction second. And I just don't feel like that necessarily got followed through.
Yeah. So what are you excited for?
Well, yeah, this is an interesting one because I think that's probably what's been piquing my attention. I'm interested in what might happen with Good Omens Season 2. I don't know how I felt about Season 1, to be honest, and it's one of those weird things of just having read the book back when it came out over and over and over again that I felt, I don't know, maybe a little let down in some stages by how that show went. It was as good as they could have done. I would have actually famously thought of it as completely unfilmable. They did quite a good job, but does it need a second season? I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. Look, it's a really good question. I think, like, I'm feeling quietly optimistic because I'm like, okay, Gaiman is directly involved. He has very clearly pointed out that they actually did outline a concept for a sequel back in the day, before Terry Pratchett passed away. And the idea that it's, that the core of this idea that is going to be created was something that was, designed by the two of them, back around the time that the book first came out, and they were thinking about, okay, what kind of an outline would we do? That's the thing that gives me some optimism around it. And in some ways, it's like, well, if it is then essentially being written for the screen without having had to hold to what was, as you say, a very nigh unfilmable book, then it might mean it sort of has a little bit more freedom to just be a great TV show, and not sort of need to hold to any specific elements that are in a book that fans would be like, oh my God, they didn't do the thing.
They didn't do the thing. And look, when you get out of the written material, and yes, I'm looking at you, Game of Thrones, you're kind of in uncharted territory. You're in the here, there be dragons,
yes.
Maybe too many dragons, and maybe dragons no, we don't want them. And I just don't know. This is where I'm at. We're back here again. I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, look, I think as an easy last thing that I want to mention, Succession season 3, it's coming in a couple of months. I like that they haven't really bothered, trying to build that thing up for month, for like half a year or something. They've just gone season 3. It's coming in the spring. You won't have to wait too long for it. And I loved the first 2 seasons of that. The second season finished in such a fascinating place with the big power play finally sort of coming, and the fact that I still love that look on Logan's face as Kendall is kind of making the big announcement that, he's gonna unravel everything that Logan's done. But he has that like look of respect on his face because he's like, all right, he's done it. I'm excited about that. And then Ted Lasso is only a couple of weeks away. Very excited for season 2 of Ted Lasso.
I will have to get around to season 1. I'll have to finally do it. Everyone's been telling me how good it is. I'll do it. I will. I promise. I'm on it.
Have you watched The Detectorists?
No.
I'm just not even going to bother then.
Yeah, okay. Don't. I am working
It's another pleasant show, but with its own different vibe. Anyway,
yeah, cozy shows are fun. Cozy shows are great, but then of course you got Mayor of Easttown, and that wasn't cozy, and that was exactly what I felt like.
Yeah, I need to watch that.
Yeah, you really do. I'm going to leave you with a fascinating little piece of trivia here. The voice of the Dungeon Master, Sidney Miller, from the Dungeons & Dragons 80s animated show, also directed a whole bunch of Get Smart, The Monkees, and The Addams Family.
Oh my God. Man, it's going to turn out that the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon is like one of those Kevin Bacon Nexus type events where just to even somehow bring Loki into this, it's like a Nexus event of all these other amazing properties that have existed throughout Hollywood history.
Almost definitely. We're on it. Shall we wrap it up?
Yes, let's do it. Nick, where can people find you and your staff?
Find me on Twitter. Not that I'm doing a lot there at the moment. It's at @dr_Nick. That's Dr. Nick. And if you are using the ABC Listen app, even if you're not around the Western Plains, you can have a listen to my Brekkie show on ABC. Just use the Listen app to select ABC Western Plains.
Awesome. And if you have thoughts on what shows you're looking forward to, you can email us, ask@biteside.com, or tweet at us @biteside. And there are, as I said earlier, lots of stories covered at biteside.com. Grab our RSS feed or follow us on Flipboard. I'm enjoying using Flipboard again sometimes. It's a really lovely place to just read stuff. It feels like social media without it having all the crap of social media. So, that's a positive. And yeah, catch us in all those places. I'm, of course, Seamus. You can follow me @Seamus. And we will catch you again really soon.